Tash Dile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Batt with another edition of Weekly News on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. Tibetans will not accept China-appointed Dalai Lama, stated His Holiness the Dalai Lama. India highly capable of contributing to global peace, says His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration congratulate Taiwanese President on her re-election. China faces backlash for its ethnic unity law. Italian Parliamentarian Matteo Bianchi questions the government on repression in Tibet. Human Rights Watch World Report 2020 calls China a global threat to human rights. Representative Sonam Frasi Lobbies for Tibet in Denmark and Norway. Tibetans will not accept Dalai Lama selected by China, asserted His Holiness the Dalai Lama during an exclusive interview with Start News Global in Bodh Gaya on Sunday this week.
But when the Chinese say that we will choose the next Dalai Lama, what is your reaction to that?
That is, you see, look, now Pension Lama. I recognize one boy through traditional way investigation.
Right.
And then Chinese officially recognize another Pension Lama. Now, officially there is Pension Lama, but the Chinese among Chinese also they usually describe a false Pension Lama, Cha Pension Lama, correct? False. False.
Or fake.
Fake Pension Lama among Chinese themselves. And among Tibetan, you see, not much sort of faith.
That's right.
So, if in case Dalai Lama institution is supposed to remain, and the next 15 Dalai Lama, you see, decided by Chinese, then Tibetan, I think, I do not believe that.
Exactly. They'll not accept the Chinese choice.
The Tibetan spiritual leader on a video conference from Bodh Gaya with Tibetan and Chinese students in New York spoke on secular ethics and global responsibility.
Your place, materialistic life, always talk about external thing, not talk about inner peace through training of our mind. So now, this information from Nalanda tradition come from Buddhist sort of tradition, but subject itself we should consider academic subject.
His Holiness had earlier addressed a group of foreign devotees emphasizing on human compassion and warm-heartedness as the basis of happiness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama once again emphasized on the relevance of India's ancient knowledge and tradition at a talk in the University of Indian Institute of Management in Bodh Gaya on Tuesday this week.
Buddha, Shakyamuni and Mahavira, Jain, all these great thinkers, they carry the 1,000-year-old India's tradition of ahimsa, karuna. So, today's world, I think India's tradition, ahimsa, karuna, is really very relevant to today's world. So, in order to show world, like previous century, 20th century, Mahatma Gandhi show world non-violent struggle. So in South Africa and many countries, many people follow. The later American Kasa, Martin Luther King, totally dedicated Mahatma Gandhi's path. So therefore, now India's 1,000-year-old tradition very much based on ahimsa, karuna.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration congratulated Tsai Ing-wen on her re-election as the President of Taiwan. While expressing confidence in Tsai Ing-wen's leadership, His Holiness wrote, "As complicated and difficult as Taiwan's relationship with the People's Republic of China is, I felt it is important that the two enjoy good relations, including through expanding people-to-people exchanges." CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye expressed admiration for Tsai Ing-wen's extraordinary leadership in advancing freedom, equality and defending democracy in Taiwan, adding that her re-election is a stirring reminder of the power of people's conviction and faith in democracy. Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, Pema Jungne wrote, "The victory of President Tsai Ing-wen with the highest votes in the history of Taiwan is a backlash against China's policies. This victory testifies your outstanding leadership and your commitment towards leading a democratic governance in Taiwan." Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen won re-election in a landslide victory, receiving more than 8.1 million votes, the highest number of votes since Taiwan's first direct presidential election in 1996. China is facing harsh criticism for its law on the so-called strengthening ethnic unity in Tibet. On Saturday last week, at the ongoing third session of the so-called 11th People's Congress of Tibet, the law to strengthen ethnic unity was endorsed and it is set to be implemented from May 1st. The law that is set to focus on maintaining the unity of nation and strengthening ethnic unity is feared by many as one of China's tactics to uproot cultural identity of the Tibetans. A similar law was implemented in Xinjiang, under which China reportedly opened a network of 1,200 known detention centers in the area with around 1 million political prisoners, mostly Uyghur Muslims, detained and subjected to ideological education as a push towards China's so-called goal of strengthening of ethnic unity. Senator Marco Rubio condemned China for its blatant human rights violations by introducing policies as such to justify repression in Tibet. Senator Rubio tweeted that the international community should not turn blind eye to this development as China continues its attempt to wipe out Tibetan culture. Central Tibetan Administration's Information Secretary Tsawang Gyalpo Arya called China's legislation of ethnic unity a gross violation of international law and the Chinese constitution.
I think this legislation of law on ethnic unity definitely forebodes a very difficult and harsh time for the Tibetans in Tibet. Because this law aims at the complete Sinicization of the Tibetan plateau through the ethnic cleansing. And China sees this Tibetan language, culture, and religion as a barriers for the complete control over the land. So what they have not been able to achieve in the last 60 years of brutal occupations and repressions, now they are trying to do it, to achieve it with this repressive law. Through this law, China is trying to gain the international legitimacy to erase the Tibetan culture and terminate the Tibetan identity through the systematic state-sponsored migration of Han Chinese into Tibet. So this is against the international law and human rights and the Chinese constitution itself. And although the very principle of ethnic unity is a very good thing, we should support it. But in the name of ethnic unity, if they are trying to erase the Tibetan identity and the Tibetan culture, the Tibetan will not be acceptable to the Tibetans.
Honorable Matteo Bianchi, member of Italian Parliament, called upon the Italian government to take clear position, especially in engaging with strategic and commercial partners like China, providing the significant role of G7 countries like Italy. Matteo Lunghi voiced concern over Chinese repression and continued crackdown on the fundamental rights of Tibetans and Hong Kongers in his speech during the Italian parliamentary session on Friday last week. He further said that violent repressions by China should not be tolerated and ignored. The Human Rights Watch released its World Report 2020 on Tuesday this week. The report called Chinese government a global threat to human rights. On release of the report, the Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, said the governments of the world need to act together to resist Beijing's assault on international human rights system. The report highlighted the abuse of laws by Chinese authorities in wrongfully arresting and torturing Tibetans who are lawfully asking for their economic and cultural rights. It cites the example of the 2 cases of land grabs in northeastern Tibet, where 9 Tibetans were sentenced for raising their voices against the forceful land grabs by the Chinese authorities. The report also noted the forceful evictions of the Buddhist monks and nuns from Yanchen Ghar monastery as part of the massive demolition campaign and sinicization policies. The report highlighted the total number of Tibetan self-immolations, including that of 24-year-old Yonten, who self-immolated last year. Mr. Sonam Frasi, representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for Northern Europe, the Baltic states and Poland, met with the parliamentarians of Denmark and Norway and highlighted the grave situation of Tibetans in Tibet and China's interference in the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. On Tuesday this week, the representative urged the parliamentarians to raise these issues on the floor of the House and also to make representations on behalf of the Tibetans and freedom-loving citizens of the respective governments. In Norway, Representative Frasi requested Member of Parliament Guri Melby and like-minded parliamentarians to consider replicating measures such as the reciprocal access to Tibet and the Tibet Policy and Support Act and hold China accountable for its repressive policies in Tibet. Central Tibetan Administration updated its existing trilingual news app Tibet.net and is now available with much more user-friendly features accessible on smartphones, both Android and Apple. So much for today. See you next time and have a great weekend.